Adam, welcome to the Profit Podcast. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to see you after, that's been quite some time, hasn't it, actually, seeing your face?
Yep, and I was looking back earlier, actually, because you were one of the first ever guests we had on the show. You were one of the very early episodes, but a lot has changed since then, which is why we've got you back.
Yes, a lot has changed for myself. And then, it must have been, 3 years ago, that?
Yeah, at least. So, yeah, it's been a long time. So we've brought him back on for an update. And obviously we've got Paul here as well. So we're all here ready to go. To kick us off then, Adam, give us a little bit of an update on the last 2 to 3 years, because when we last spoke, your main role was personal training and spoke about nutrition in that context, but things have gone in slightly different direction for you now. So just give everyone a bit of an update as to what the last few years have been like.
And it's so long since the last one that Stockport County are back in the Football League. That's how long it's been.
I think the last time we spoke, County were in the National League North, and I was going mad away to Chorley and those kind of places, whereas now, I can be a bit more relaxed and we're in the Football League.
Adam is a die-hard Stockport County fan for the listeners out there. So, back in the Football League.
You've been going as well, though, haven't you, recently? You've been taking your boys.
I've been taking my boys down to Stockport, and I'll tell you what, the standard of football is very good, and the atmosphere is very good as well. I'll be going again.
It is very good.
Going again.
I forked out a season ticket last week, and then my friend, about 10 hours after the deadline for it, told me he had a free one for me. I'd already had 300 quid on a season ticket.
Always the way. So last 2 or 3 years, what have you been up to?
I don't know if anyone's noticed, a lot's happened in the world in the last 2 to 3 years since then. And because of that, I guess things for myself have changed massively as well. So if we take ourselves 2-3 years ago, I was finishing off my undergrad in nutritional sciences, and I'd already been accepted at Leeds Beckett to do dietetics. Dietetics was always my plan. It has been for like the last 6-7 years. That's kind of where I wanted to go with it. But I think what I was going to do with that qualification is what's changed in the last 2-3 years. Last time we were speaking, I obviously was within Profit, teaching, presenting the nutrition side of things, and also running the level 2 and level 3 personal training courses as well. So most of my daily and weekly work was around presenting and teaching, and I never thought that would actually change. And I just thought, well, being a dietitian, it just provides you that authenticity, and that gives you that backing, in terms of qualification to go forward. And obviously COVID hit and things massively changed, and all that teaching has stopped because of that. So I'm now looking at, or I will be from next month, actually working as a dietitian in the NHS within the acute setting, so within a hospital within Manchester. And I never saw that coming about 2-3 years ago. So apart from that, and going off and spending the last year on placements in hospitals around Yorkshire, and just been in Newcastle for the last 3 months, which has been brilliant. What else have I been doing? I did the MNU, the Mat Nutrition course, about 2 years ago. I finished that one, which I'll definitely discuss today as well, because I think for personal trainers and nutritionists, that is a brilliant course to do, and provided me with so much, I guess, additional learning, but the practical side of it as well just helps. It really helps you kind of understand, how can I put this into practice with my clients. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2-3 years. Just been very busy, so studying and basically staying within food, but changing my career completely, which as I will discuss, the differences, I guess, between dietetics and optimal health and being a nutritionist / PT, which I have been in the past.
I think that'll form a bulk of the conversation today, is the differences that you've seen, because your PT career goes back many years. I can't even remember how many. There's quite a lot of experience.
We've known each other 12 years, I think, haven't we?
12, long time. And you've kind of seen nutrition from every level now. So every level. So the reason we wanted you on was to talk about maybe what you've seen now as a dietitian and looking back, because I don't think there's many people who have that experience. Someone who's been a PT, done things like MNU, gone to obviously now the level of qualification you are,
Yeah.
to have your insights of working with people and getting the qualifications. What should personal trainers be doing? It's probably quite a broad question, but
no, it's a good one.
Where do we start with that?
Well, as I guess over the last 12 years or so, I've literally seen every fad, diet, every trend within nutrition, and a lot of that was what influenced me into the learning and the teaching, and to become a lot more evidence-based with my my kind of way of thinking and why I went down the dietetic route. And yeah, it's been an interesting sort of learning curve over the last 12 years or so with the nutrition. I guess when it comes to what I've learned from the dietetic point of view and how that kind of links in to the PT and the nutrition and the life I was doing beforehand, if we look at the similarities to begin with, I think first of all, the thing we're taught first and foremost is it should be patient-centered, or it should be person-centered. So no matter what the care plan and the plan of action we're looking to do within dietetics, you're always putting the person in front of you at the foreground of it. So your plan has to be flexible, and it has to you have to be able to be flexible and alter and change the way of your thinking to optimize the plan and the care of that person in front of you. And realistically, that's exactly what a PT or a nutritionist should be doing as well. They should be looking at the person and thinking, right, what does this person need compared to the other person I'm working with? There are going to be differences, and you can't use that cookie cutter type of plan with them. And you do need to think, you need to be able to have an array of skills, knowledge, and I guess tools to be able to get the best out of individuals in front of you. So that's definitely a similarity. I think the stark contrast that I've learned working within hospitals compared to as a PT is I spent the best part of a decade telling people, or trying to find ways of practically getting people to eat less snacks and eating less of the little things that add up to the point where they're gaining weight. Because for the majority of clients that we have in the health and fitness industry, it's weight loss, it's muscle gain, it's aesthetic to a sense, isn't it? Whereas as a dietitian, all I've been doing for the past year in hospitals is looking at ways to build up someone's nutritional intake and adding in snacks and finding ways of actually adding calories in to get them to stabilize their weight or gain weight. Because one thing I think that really surprises people is, well, apart from 1 week that I worked in bariatric surgery, and I got to actually go into theatre to see bariatric surgery being taking place, and I'm working with people pre and post-op, I've never had to recommend weight loss management as a dietitian. There's specific groups for that and specific dietitians that will deal with that, but within hospital, we don't see people due to needing weight loss. It's people who are malnourished, people who are of a very, very low BMI, people haven't been eating, who are at risk of things like refeeding syndrome, for example, which are more clinically important at that time and in that stage within hospital. So as I said, it's completely flipped my thinking from like, how can we get you to eat less snacks and just eat a good, eat well throughout the day, to we need to get so much food into you just to get your calories up. So it's been a hard mindset shift for me, I would say.
That's really surprised me. I did not see that coming. So there is no real. No, I didn't think you were going to say that. So there isn't really well, you sort of answered it there, didn't you? That by the time you get to hospital, they're malnourished. So you're having to try and get food and good nutrients into people, but there isn't that sort of alarm system for when somebody's morbidly obese.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
It's not. I guess as we know, weight loss takes a long time, and when someone's in the hospital, you're not really wanting that, even though in some cases a bit of weight loss will help if they're there for quite a period of time. It's not a threat, like life-threatening situation for most cases. Whereas people who are
not immediately anyway.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
that's it. So for those who are malnourished, come in, maybe not have eaten for 5, 10 days, 2 weeks, they've lost 10, 15, 20% of their body weight. These people who are at a much more critical stage and more likely to have either a worse prognosis going forward and potentially die as well. So that's where the main focus within hospitals is a bit. And so a lot of what I will be doing as a dietitian is actually, well, to begin with, before I become a specialist in an area, is basically keeping people alive via food and keeping them stable and well nourished, which in a way kind of leads into, I guess, what we'll discuss later, where my thoughts and where my priorities have changed in terms of working with people and with food. But yeah, that's the biggest shock, and it always surprises people, because obviously you get the cliche, oh, I bet you just offer salads and fruit and vegetables. I've never once recommended vegetables to a patient. Like, I just recommend anything that's high calorie and high protein, unless obviously they've got like a renal issue, which means that the protein needs to be adapted. A lot of it is that, and yeah, that was a big change and a big surprise, I guess. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but yeah.
I think because most people wouldn't. When you associate nutrition, you think of weight loss rather than weight gain.
Yeah.
But now you've said it, it seems, like you said, it seems so obvious.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've spent many years studying, Adam, just to prescribe everyone ice cream.
Yeah, basically that is it. But one of the running jokes a lot of the times is well, a lot of people within the hospital will end up on supplements. So they end up on different types of nutritional supplements. So I've just gone from recommending people the lowest calorie whey proteins to the highest calorie whey protein. That's basically all I've done. And spent 6 years and about £100,000 doing
it. So knowing now you're in the clinical setting and you know that kind of what the structure and the setup of that is and who you're mostly helping, what's the role of the personal trainer and the nutritionist? And because it must now, they must fit in somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously that is that was just when you go in as a band 5, so your foundation level dietitian, that's what you're potentially going to be looking at. It's just your general patient. But over the last year, I've spent a lot of time with various patients with different conditions, so various cancers, brain tumors, brain injuries, strokes, Parkinson's, COPD. I mean, you name it. I've sat and been with someone and worked with a patient with that, and obviously a huge amount of it is just our health over time deteriorates, and it's just potluck to an extent. But there has also definitely been occasions where I've come across people, and it is a decent percentage where you can look back in their past medical history, you can look at their lifestyle, and you can see that they've potentially not looked after themselves brilliantly.
Right.
And they've possibly not, they may have smoked in excess, they have drank in excess, they've not exactly been physically active, they don't really have a great diet or relationship with food, be it for various reasons. And I've seen people of all these kind of categories. So even though, as I said, in the short term, in that kind of acute setting as a dietitian, you're kind of trying to keep someone, a lot of the people you're trying to keep alive through food, actually, there's many people that will be coming into hospital who, with life-changing issues and conditions, which actually, if they focus more on their health, potentially further down the line, earlier on in time, they would possibly not be there.
Yeah. And what percentage of people do you think that's been that you've seen? You said quite large.
Depends on the area I've been in. So the one thing I've done for the last 3 months in Newcastle is
careful now. This is where I'm from, up that way.
No, it's a lipid. It's been a lipid clinic, so I've been doing now people with cholesterol, but it's hyperlipidemia. So I'm familiar with hyperlipidemia, which is genetic high cholesterol. and so their cholesterol is going to be high. Anyway, it's one of those where it's just more about managing it, but that was very much a focus on diet and lifestyle. Within that, I'd say 75% of patients would be, say, overweight and would be inactive. There would be some that you'd also have some people. There were some who were coming in fit as a fiddle, like unbelievably, like really young, like very, very young people, really, really fit, not an ounce of body fat on them, and their cholesterol was through the roof. Like, so it's just the genetic factor is so strong. But as I described it to them, it's almost when you have something like that, then taking control of your lifestyle and your diet actually becomes more of an important factor, because it's that one thing you can control, and it's the one thing that you almost have to focus on more so because you've been dealt a bad hand in terms of your genetics. So even in those situations, diet and lifestyle became much more important. Again, depending on the ward, I think a lot of people I'd see were, I guess, 50 plus. Not all of them. I sadly saw a lot of people in their sort of 20s and 30s with various issues, but most people would be sort of 50 plus, and I reckon the 20%, 25% at least would be health. If they improve their health, they could possibly have been in a different situation.
Good. That's such a good way to explain it as well, that their health becomes even more important when they've been dealt a bad hand. I'd be so pissed off if I was 25, 30 years old, working out, eating well, and I just got a duff hand. My cholesterol's just high. Yeah. You have to be very careful with how you communicate that, I guess.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It kind of, you have to empathize with them, and you have to almost just acknowledge that what they're doing, everything they're doing is correct. And it's just unfortunate, but then it's almost then, I guess, empowering them to know that actually what you're doing is right and doing you good. So you need to continue with it, and you need to keep focusing on the lifestyle side of things.
That's good. That's good.
So although what's something I'm interested in, Adam, is that even though you're now almost working in completely the opposite way in terms of weight loss versus weight gain, has obviously through what you've studied, but then also through the experience of the other side of it, if you were now going to go back into that PT realm, would that change how you approach things, do you think? Would anything look or feel different to you than maybe how you did it before?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think when I've reflected on this, I think there is too much of an emphasis in the health and fitness industry on weight loss and aesthetics and the whole before and after scene. There's too much on that and not enough. Well, I guess it is shifting, and it has shifted over the last couple of years, and you'll have seen the number of influencers definitely change their way and what they would say to other people by going from it's all about weight loss and stop being overweight, lose weight, to it's all about health and being the whole package in terms of mental health, physical health. But yeah, I think looking at it now, I think there's too much of an emphasis on weight loss and not enough on just general well-being, general health, and something I've always been passionate about, which is like a good relationship with food and a good understanding, actually, good knowledge of food as well.
Yeah. Because I suppose this is a conversation I know I've had a few times, is that sometimes it's not about whether or not a food is good or bad, it's whether your relationship with that food is good or bad. And to one person, that food might not be a problem because they've got a good relationship with it. But if you've got a bad relationship with it, then might want to choose something else. So when you mentioned then there'd be more of an emphasis on health in general and well-being, how do you think that would transpire in terms of what you then actually do with the person? What do you think might be different there?
So I've always been someone who kind of believes in, I guess, creating a good structure around someone's eating habits and making it personal to their life. But that kind of the structure around it is key, I think, because I think the problem nowadays is we have so much convenience and so much on the go, and we're not thinking necessarily about what we're actually eating. And obviously with things like all the apps now where you can just get food delivered to your house from literally everywhere and anywhere, it has created a monster. in that sense. So I think just stripping it back to basics, getting people to understand about a well-balanced diet to begin with, and not cutting things out, which obviously over the years has been, sometimes it's been all about fats, or about carbs, sometimes it's all about the amount of protein you have in it. It's just a bit too macro focused instead of just looking at it from a general food first approach. So I would definitely get people to be focusing on food, not macronutrients, and understanding about how to get a balanced diet, also getting that structure where they possibly don't need to snack and eat as much crap so in between the meals, and can actually just, I guess, optimize their health, but also just whatever their goal is to help that as well.
Nice. So if there was PTs listening to this now, where would they start with a client? You know, when you first get a client in, where could they start? Because they're not a qualified nutritionist or dietitian or anything like that. So I kind of want to get that across as well. What could a PT do? Where could they start? Where could they have an impact with a client safely and effectively?
Well, if I just take the simplest tool that we use in dietetics is a diet history. So actually starting with what they're already doing and what they're already eating is something I've always done, but it's followed through into the dietetic side of things. So making sure that you understand their current eating patterns, what they currently eat, what they currently like, what their dislikes are, and any potential barriers to that. You could use things like your food diaries. So the first thing I'd always give a client is a food diary for a number of days, be it on weekdays and weekend days, so I can see the differences. And then from there, you get an idea of where they currently are. You might have an idea of where you'd like them to get to. And then it's just kind of moving them along that path, I guess, that sliding scale of improving small habits. And I think one of them is just that structure. So if you have a client in front of you that potentially the diet's not the best, but you can see that there's clearly some areas that they can improve in terms of, are they missing big amounts of time between meals? And then when they are coming to eat, are they eating two big meals? Are they eating bigger portions? Are they snacking a lot? Because that's one thing I have noticed with patients when I've seen them, either in hospital or as outpatient within clinics, is people who tend to miss a lot of meals, tend to then snack a lot during the evenings, for example, which I think is a big downfall for a lot of people. So I would be looking at what they're already doing, and then trying to slowly improve that to make it a more rounded diet, a more balanced one. Either it could be improving the quality or the amount of foods high in protein. It might be improving the amount of fiber and vegetables and fruits in their diet, just getting more whole foods in there.
Yeah,
it depends on the person in front of you, but I'd just be starting simple instead of going, right, this is what I know, this is what I think, this is what I want you to do, without taking any consideration into account of what they're already doing, because it might either be completely opposite to how they eat, and then you've switched them off because they think it's unachievable, or you're just telling them to do something that is quite close to what they're already doing, and you're not really taking that into account either. So it's just going back to that being person-centered as well.
Yeah, sounds so simplistic as well, but simple's not always easy, is it? As we know, but
no, it's not. I think you overthink it as well sometimes. I know I have done in the past. You think, I need to be doing more. I need to be almost I need to find this magic or this golden plan, or this just way of making everything just fit perfectly. But actually, humans and human psychology is a very complex thing, and habit changing takes a long time, and it can be a long, frustrating process for the both of you. And you just have to almost, as I said, I would always start from where they are now and then work towards where you feel they may need to get to. And as long as you communicate that correctly with them and they understand the reasons why you're recommending something to be changed, I think you'll you'll get buy-in, you'll get rapport from that.
And I think
go on, mate.
While we're on this topic, I think an important question to ask, just to try and get some clarity on this, because in all honesty, I don't actually know where the line's drawn here, and I don't know whether this is a myth or not, but to what degree, Adam, are personal trainers meant to or allowed to intervene with someone's nutritional intake? We always talk about this scope of practice, and where does dietetics fit? Like, to me, it sounds like if you reach the point where you're in front of someone like yourself, then, you know, I should probably listen to everything you tell me, you know, that I need to do.
Oh, you're out of there. Yeah.
But, you know, so again, just thinking about our audience and potentially the newer end of personal trainers, and when they see that food diary for the first time, there might be loads of like glaringly obvious things to them. But again, if we're working within our scope of practice, or whatever you want to call it, where do we draw these lines? What can or what should and shouldn't we be doing?
So scope of practice is something which is drilled into you as a dietitian, and our scope of practice is really quite tight. Like, we're what we are and are not allowed to advise is very restricted, I'd say, compared to what a nutritionist might be able to say, or a PT might be able to say. Even though legally there's a lot of things a PT or nutritionist shouldn't say, there's no one that's going to strike them off or take away their registration if they do something outside of those guides, if that makes sense. There's no
got it. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, there's no
governing body.
Yeah, there's nothing there. That's one of the only issues I'd say really within the health fitness industry, that it's just not tight enough in terms of what you can and cannot say, and that's why you get a lot of charlatans, isn't it, within the industry, which just say what they think and say what they want.
I was going to say there's positives to that and massive negatives to it as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's been times in my dietetic practice when I've had a patient in front of me ask me a question about something regarding, say, PCOS, and I know the answer, but I don't know if I'm actually legally allowed to discuss it. So I feel a bit, and I've spoken to this with my supervisors during my studies, and said, you know, it's quite challenging for me because I'm not coming from a blank canvas from just through uni. I'm coming from I've got a good, you know, a strong knowledge of nutrition behind me, and in some cases I've kind of seen that I have a stronger overall understanding of nutrition than some dietitians. However, those lines are very strict, so I'm a bit more cautious, I'd say, now, in terms of within the acute setting of what I'd say. Whereas if I was within private, as long as I'm qualified and it's within my realms, I'd say it. As a PT, going back to being a PT, so the age-old one is not prescribing nutrition. So nutrition shouldn't be prescriptive. So you shouldn't be telling someone exactly what to have in terms of food. And I guess that boils down to not telling them exactly what types of food, but kind of measurements of foods as well. And we know it goes on. We know it happens. The whole bodybuilding and comp prep business would not exist without prescriptive nutrition. If there was a governing body there, potentially that wouldn't happen, or you'd have better educated people doing it in the first place, with health in mind, not just see how ripped we can get in a certain amount of time. But yes, nothing prescriptive is definitely something I'd suggest. I don't even think you need to go that specific anyway when it comes to macros. One thing I would also recommend is actually just using a range. That's one thing I've learned. Instead of being really specific with your, like, say, calories and working out to lose a pound a week, this is roughly what your estimated calorie need would be. I'd actually use a range. It gives more leeway for the person, the patient. It allows you to have a bit more scope for sort of adjusting it and maneuvering it over time. And it's the same for protein. So within dietetics, we'll use a range for calories and for protein. And so that's something I'd recommend if you are going to be more specific, which you're allowed to be, you know, with it as a PT and as a nutritionist, you can recommend based on the guidelines, things like your calories and your protein. But I'd use a range. I just think it gives you a bit more scope and a bit more flexibility, and it gives the client more flexibility as well. Is there anything else I would say in terms of what not to do? it's just things like be wary of things like supplements as well, and certain, I guess, interactions with medications. That's one thing that you taught a lot, is the biochemistry, and always looking at like the relevant medications that people are on within hospitals. You don't know necessarily if your if your client is on certain medications, there might be some interaction there with specific multivitamins or foods. And if you're prescribing them food instead of giving them a general recommendation on types of foods to eat, then you're setting yourself up there for to be in a bit of a sticky situation if something turns south for them, I say.
Yeah, that's a scary one, because I reckon there's a lot of PTs that will prescribe certain supplements as well without really getting a full history. Yeah. So it's fairly blurry, isn't it? But also quite clear in some ways what you've just said. So could you, the lady with PCOS, you could actually say to her, meet me down the road in my nutrition clinic, and I can give you some advice.
So in this instance, it was out in Untitled. So Untitled is a supplement which has gathered a lot of pace in recent years in terms of its effectiveness with those with PCOS and menstrual cycle abnormalities as such. And the evidence is growing and growing and growing, and it's widely kind of accepted now. There's a no harm to trying it, and it is pretty effective. However, because it's not in, say, the guidelines for a dietitian yet, it's not within the BDA, it's not within the NICE guidelines, that's where the boundaries are. So it's one of those where you can almost, as a nutritionist or something, I'd be advising someone to give it a go, whereas especially whilst I've been on placement and you don't want to do anything wrong, I wasn't really willing to do so, but the person asked me in a way where I could agree with them, and they could go away and try it for themselves.
It's all in the communication.
It is, yeah.
I've got just based on that last bit, Adam, and then something you mentioned earlier on with our previous question, I've got sort of two things that I think are slightly related, and I just thought I'd be interested to get your thoughts on these. So when you mentioned ranges for calories and protein and stuff, are the ranges that you use based on are these like RDAs and government guidelines, or are you using guidelines that have been more scientifically adjusted based on research? Like, how different is what you recommend versus what government recommendations? And then sort of along that same line, I think there's a fairly general understanding that when it comes to like medicine and things like that, there's a bit of a delay between what the research shows and then what actually gets done at patient level. There's probably like a 10-year delay.
Yeah.
Do you see that in nutrition as well? Is the stuff that you're reading that we know about that we aren't yet putting into practice because it's in that? Because it sounds like that example with that lady is a really good example of that. There's something going on that we know is effective to some degree. It's just that it's stuck in the bureaucracy of the system.
Yeah, there needs to be a certain level of systematic review, meta-analysis, gold standards, evidence before they will publish it and allow it to be classed as strong enough evidence to be put through. I guess there's a couple of examples, or an example I know of, which, so for those with gallstones or a removed gallbladder, the thinking I always had in the older reading and all the research was someone may have to be on a lower fat diet, whereas now the newer guidelines within dietetics is someone doesn't have to be. They just have to, as long as it's not ridiculously high fat, just within moderation, it's fine, but they don't have to be on a low fat diet like they used to have to be. So that's something that's definitely changed recently. When you're talking about things like your calories and protein, they are different. So the things that we see, that the government, like 2,000 calories or 2,500 calories for men, 2,000 for women, and it's about 56 grams of protein for women and about 64 for men. It's not what we use. It's called a Pennish book. It's downstairs. I should have brought it. It's just a massive book of formulas and literature and writing to help us. It's like our little it's our guidebook. And in terms of, say, if we go with calories, there's a factor, there's a formula that they've worked out based on evidence. Some of it's strong, some of it not as strong. There is areas of weakness within the evidence used. Where there isn't a specific condition, for example, it might be a type of stroke or COPD, which affects the lungs. Conditions like this will have a certain number, which you times their body weight in kilograms by, and then you attach a PAL, physical activity level, to that. And if there isn't, then there's a generic one. So generically, what you do is you get the body weight by kilograms and times it by 20 to 25, depending on their BMI, or 25 to 30 if they've got a low BMI. For those who are classed as obese, you alter their calories and their protein. You'd use the Mifflin St. Jean method for calories, and you use a percentile of their overall protein needs. When it comes to protein, I was quite surprised. I was expecting everything to be like 0.8 grams of protein to 1 gram and really low, which is what we always hear and read about. But actually, the only people I ever had to give between 0.8 and 1 gram were those on who have like kidney failure, like CKD, the level 4, level 5, or an acute kidney injury. So if the kidneys at the time are not functioning, or they've got chronic kidney disease, then that would be a low protein requisite. But generically, it'd be between 1 gram and 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram, which realistically isn't actually that low. Like I myself aim for 1.5 grams of protein per body weight myself. So I was quite surprised that actually the protein's a bit higher than I anticipated. People who may need further, those who are underweight, those who may have skin issues where they might have sores, like pressure sores, they need more protein. Those who may have just received certain treatments, they'll actually go up anywhere to like 2 grams per kg as well. So protein was relatively high, I actually found, which again was quite surprising, because I was expecting everyone be about 1 gram of protein, and then it would just be really super low. But actually, protein's something we still really focus on within the acute setting, to make sure people are getting enough of, and to maintain their muscle mass and their function and their weight.
That's really good to hear, because I'm surprised at that. Like you, I thought it would be on the lower end. Yeah.
It's surprising to me that it's so different from what you would recommend to the general population. It seems really
it seems to be different.
Yeah. It just seems like a weird way of and I suppose as well, what you then start to think, if you sort of play that out in your head, is assuming that we are going to stick to a general guideline in terms of calories. If we're going to say that the protein is that much higher than the government recommendation, then maybe what's that in place of? Is it that we're just eating a little less carbohydrate and fat, or it seems weird that it's so different.
Yeah, I think the government one, I think it's just the simplest way. They basically take the minimum you need in terms of protein and go off the average weight of male and female, and then that's how they've created that. Obviously, dietetics is a bit more specific to the person. However, in general population, I think going back many years to potentially like the Charles Poliquin years within the industry, and that people are looking at like 4 grams per kg of protein, which is a ridiculous amount of protein. You just don't need that much. Not the general population. I generally don't think anyone would need that much. I think, again, this is something I did way before dietetics, but I kind of reflected on whilst I was doing my undergrad, was the amount of protein I was having and the amount of meat I was consuming. And I reduced that and found that actually by reducing that, you can incorporate more carbohydrates and you can incorporate a bit more fat into your diet and have a bit more balance without everything having to be chicken breast or steak. And that's that, for your meal. So I think it's, again, that's something for the PTs to think about, is actually how much protein does my client need? Like are they coming to the gym 2-3 times a week to just do a full body workout, and are they just general people, because if so, they probably don't ever need to go above that 1.5 times their body weight.
Yeah.
They're not bodybuilders, they're not elite athletes. So can you then maybe find, if you're going to give them a calorie range, can they have a bit more flexibility within that to have something that they enjoy, because they don't need that extra 200 calories a day from protein, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's 99.9% of everybody's clients. They just need more balance, more enjoyment, like you said, better relationship with food. Yeah. Keep it simple. I'm going to ask you about education for trainers as well. You mentioned the MNU course and how good that was for you at the time when you did it. But I know you've done a lot more as well. So if there's a trainer now listening thinking, I want to educate myself more in nutrition, because we get asked this all the time, what's your experience of that and what would you recommend?
So the first one I did years and years and years ago was Precision Nutrition with John Berardi. And so I did that. That was the first thing. That was what really got me into sort of nutrition coaching in the beginning. And that's very, very good for the coaching aspects, the communication way of thinking. And because in America and North America, they're a bit tighter, they're a lot stricter in what they can and cannot say. As nutritionists, as PTs, they kind of teach you ways of habit-based sort of training within nutrition, and habit-based nutrition coaching. So I think that's always a really good course to do. I think for me, the MNU, the nutrition one, was something which really kind of incorporated a bit of everything. It was potentially a bit more theory, and the practical side of it was how to create the tools and how to go about discussing and, I guess, educating your clients on nutrition. It was a really, really good course though, in terms of, it's just very thorough. I just felt it kind of ticks every box that you'd possibly need. Some bits will definitely go over your head. Even for myself, I was like, okay, that's a bit much, but I think they do a brilliant job of really kind of making it applicable to a PT or a nutritionist. So in terms of it's a good investment in terms of financially. I think it's a year of studying, week in, week out. There is an exam. It's not just to turn up and get a certificate kind of job. Neither is the PN, the Precision Nutrition course. But it's well worth, I think, that time and that money if you really actually want to get better at coaching and you actually want to get better with your understanding and learning nutrition. And I know myself from being within Profits for so long, the amount of PTs within that did the course as well. And I've done the course since myself. And I still see now people pop up who are doing it. So yeah, that's definitely a course I would recommend out there at the moment. I'd say that's the gold standard, especially in the UK.
I have 2 or 3 people doing the MNU at the minute who I mentor, and they're same thing. They say it's awesome. It's a really high standard, and I love the PN courses. I've done those as well. I think they're top. I wasn't aware that the legislation's tighter over there, and that's why they focus more on habit building.
They're not necessarily allowed to. Well, the thing is, North America is a suing culture, isn't it, as well? So they want to they sue everyone for anything, don't they? So it's one of them.
You got to be careful what you say.
Yeah, whereas over here we're too polite.
I think that's a good place to wrap on this today. The only other questions I wanted to ask is, what's next for you?
I've got a month to polish off my dissertation, which is Are
you avoiding it?
No, I can't avoid it, unfortunately. So it's I'm doing a systematic review on creatine monohydrate supplementation and the effects on depression and depressive symptoms. So it's quite heavy. It's a heavy one.
It is.
Yeah. It's really good though. I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to finishing it, but I'm looking forward to seeing the sort of results of it. That kind of stemmed from my, I guess, I was interested and intrigued about the idea of vegetarians, and particularly those who avoid meat, having higher levels of depression and depressive symptoms. And I just found that a lot of systematic reviews had already been written At the point when I'd written my proposal on it, about 3 had come out in that month. So I had to change it up. And the only thing that hadn't been written about was creatine. So creatine monohydrate supplementation is what I'm doing that on. And then I will be going into becoming a dietitian in the next month or two. So got a job lined up in Manchester, and I'll be doing that whilst then starting to set up my private aspect on the side. I'm going to be focusing mainly on IBS and FODMAP because that's what I'm qualified to do. I just have to wait to get my registration through as a dietitian, and then I'm fully able to, I'm qualified to do the IBS and FODMAP side of things within dietetics. And then potentially that's where I'll go down, or I'll either keep that just as my private, and then long term, it's looking for a specialism within dietetics, which I've not decided on yet. I've got a good year or two to wait and to decide what I want to do before then.
Well, knowing you for 12 years or however long it's been, you don't sit still for long. So you'll no doubt you'll be on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and it all sounds really good.
Yeah, I've got some more education to do. I'm tempted to go do a postgrad diploma next year, which
I knew there'd be something lined up. That's
for sports performance, sports nutrition for dietetics, so I can then be on the sports register as well.
Well, I'm sure you'll smash that as well. Is there anywhere where people can find you directly? So Instagram handles, whatever else, wherever else.
Instagram's probably easier. I've not posted much on nutrition the last few months because of it, but my Instagram is adam.cummins_nutrition, and then my website is linked on there as well. So yeah, that'd be the easiest place to find me is Instagram.
Awesome, mate. It's been really good, insightful today. Different from the last episode as well you did on here, which has been brilliant. And we'll be watching County with a keen eye to see if they can stay up.
I hope that's either on there anyway.
Well, we can hopefully in a few years' time, Adam will be running his private. We'll bring him back on. He's got his private facility. Stockporter in the Premiership.
BA.
I'll take the lead one.
Right. Thanks for today, pal. And we'll get you on again at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome back to the ProFit podcast. I'm your host, Paul Campy, and here with your other host, Matt Robinson. How are you doing, bud?
Very good. Thank you, mate. Very good.
Good. And today we have another special guest for you. We're hammering the guests at the minute. And this is a friend and a colleague of both of ours for many, many, many years. Been on the podcast before. A chap called Adam Cummins, who is extremely highly qualified in nutrition now, a qualified dietitian and a nutritionist, and has been a personal trainer for a number of years and done lots and lots and lots of other qualifications in nutrition. And we wanted to bring Adam on today because he gave such a good insight into that entire journey of being a PT with potentially no knowledge about nutrition right up to his level today. So he can almost look back and reflect on mistakes he made and what he knows now and what his recommendations are now for PTs working with their clients around nutrition and what things he would suggest. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it will be a great one for PTs to listen to. Very simplistic concepts, but as we all know, simple is not always easy. What did you make of it, Matt?
Yeah, I just thought it was great to get someone on that's got that full spectrum of nutritional experience, because quite often you either speak to a PT that's specialized in nutrition, or you speak to someone at the other end that's never been a PT and only does nutrition. So it's nice to have someone like Adam, because I think it's probably quite rare to come across someone like that. Actually thinking now, I don't think you get many people like that have done that whole spectrum across the board. And as you'll hear in the interview, another surprise is actually what he actually finds himself doing now as a dietitian. It's not what you would expect him to be doing. Me and Paul were surprised by it. Adam was surprised by it himself. So we'll leave that there as a little open loop for you to close off as you listen to it. But yeah, really good conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's definitely a few surprises in there, but no spoilers.
Yeah.
So enjoy this one. If you're keen on nutrition, you're stuck on nutrition with what to do with your clients, this is definitely for you. And if you like this episode, we haven't been doing this recently, we've just been talking about this, but make sure you do screenshot it, share with friends, share with any PTs that you think would benefit from listening to this, and make sure that they get to hear these conversations, because they will be really valuable.
Yeah. And if you are sharing anything, if you can tag the guest as well, then that's always great, because it's just nice for them to know that their conversation with us has had an impact on you. I know that that's always a great bit of feedback for them. So yeah, make sure that anything you share, you tag them in as well. It's always great for them, their ego, our ego, everyone's ego.
All right. And enjoy the episode.